Welcome back to the Wolverine.com podcast. I'm John Borton, and we're here on a Monday with one of our regulars. As you know, if you're around here at all, Tom Crawford, longtime sports talk radio personality out of East Lansing, Michigan. He is a regular panelist on the weekly TV show Press Pass with Jack Ebling, seen Sunday nights on Fox 47 in Lansing. Founder and principal of the Crawford Podcasting Network. Tom is a proud U of M alum and a weekly podcast participant here on the Wolverine Podcast. You can find him on Twitter at BlueBellyTom. You'll be able to find him here every week of the football and basketball seasons, and you do today. Welcome, Mr. Crawford.
Well, it's great to be back, John. Less than 2 weeks. I mean, we're 1 week from quote-unquote game week. For that Colorado State game. Everybody's getting excited about the scrimmages and the reports coming out of Ann Arbor. So, hey, Michigan's got a goose egg on the right side of the column right now. So let's ride that rapids as long as we can, right?
And I think they keep it at least 12 weeks.
Yeah,
that's including the bye week. We'll see how that all turns out. But I have a feeling that they're going to have a really nice long run this year. The Football Power Index by ESPN would seem to agree. Michigan is number 6 there, behind Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, and Notre Dame. And I find some very interesting results on this. I want to throw a few of them at you and just have you react to them. No big surprise starting out. Michigan is 97% or more to win its 3 non-conference games. We've talked about those. So, it's like they are almost given no chance to be upset in those.
Yeah, and that like I said, it is what it is. I think much more importantly, as I indicated last week, is what those Big Ten teams do and how they can jack up their credibility with some key wins in the early non-conference play. So, just get it done. I'm tired of complaining about it. I'm sure people are tired of me complaining about the non-conference slate. So we'll move on with that. But yeah, I mean, when you can just get on the field and compete with somebody other than has their own jersey on, I'm sure these players are getting tired of it with the Saturday scrimmages and the hitting during the week. It's ready to go live on September 3rd.
I think most people would agree that the 3 toughest games leading up to the Ohio State game would be at Iowa. We've talked a lot about that. Home against Penn State, home against Michigan State. Here's what I found interesting. I mean, almost a toss-up between those 3, but the highest chance of victory in the Power Ratings Index is Michigan at Iowa, 70% chance of Michigan winning that game. October 29th against Michigan State, 69.5% chance. Penn State, 66.9%. That's a little surprising to me, given the venues.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I'm not the game that really sticks in my mind lately, and this started with Big Ten Media Days, is the November 12th game with Nebraska at home. Always there's that game historically in Michigan's program that has snuck up on Michigan, even at home. And Scott Frost came really close to winning a lot of games last year. And he denoted that, obviously, at Big Ten Media Days. And he's right. There's no denying it. They were literally in every game. And maybe that finally, Nebraska under Scott Frost moves it up the meter and has a productive year and is relevant and people are concerned about him. And the way that game sits on November 12th, it's kind of a couple weeks after Michigan State game and, 2 weeks before Ohio State. It's just sitting there in this precarious position. And that one has got my attention lately for some strange reason.
I think that's legitimate. I think it's less precarious in my mind because unlike last year, it is not a night game in Lincoln, Nebraska. I think that's huge. But anybody that watched Nebraska last year knows that it was very close to having a respectable record. I mean, they just couldn't close. And certainly they almost did against Michigan. A very scary win for the Wolverines there. But yes, I'd agree. That's one to watch down the road. Here's what maybe the sole reason that I picked to talk about this particular subject, and that is that the FPI gives Michigan a 15.2% chance of winning at Ohio State. And I just think that sounds really low. Your thoughts?
Well, I think what people are probably more twisted up in is that payback. I mean, like how can Ohio State just be overflowing with revenge? How can they not be overflowing with revenge and to pay back Michigan? And and Michigan has had a couple. The 2016 game they could have won down there. We know that, but it's been a tough place to play. They haven't won down there since Drew Henson, I think, was 2000
Mm-hmm.
on that bootleg. When they
Naked bootleg.
naked bootleg closed out that game in 2000. I mean, that's a long time ago. A lot of losses down in Columbus for the Wolverines, and so I think historically, the data tells that. Emotionally, I think Ohio State they feel that they will have the advantage, and it's just it's got awful place to play for Michigan lately at the Horseshoe.
I would agree with that, and I think there's no question that Ohio State ought to be looked at early on as the favorite in that game. They are a loaded roster. They have motivation after last year. They're at home where, you better beat them by 2 touchdowns to beat them by 1 point. The only thing that got me going was the percentage. I would put it more, given what Michigan did last year, what they learned in beating the Buckeyes, the physicality that they employed, all the things that went into that, I would put it more like 60-40 Ohio State rather than 85-15.
I don't know. I'd go 60-40, but I'd definitely go 70-30. And, we're going to know a lot more by then. Who knows? I mean, this Michigan team potentially could be really, really good. I mean, they could win the national championship. I'm not saying that with maize and blue colored, goggles on here. It's possible. Do I think it's probable? No. And I think I think Ohio State's standing in their way.
Yeah.
And like I said last week, if the Big Ten does its job and plays well in non-conference, they could sneak in to the CFP with a season-ending loss to Ohio State, despite the weak non-conference slate.
I would not be surprised. In fact, in our football preview, I predicted that both Ohio State and Michigan make the college football playoff this year. That's a long way down the road. If Michigan gets there, they might have found some new assistants up front on the defensive line, because we learned now there is a newcomer that got in just under the wire. You're midway through camp, and you find out that Iabi Anoma, who a former 5-star high school player, all of a sudden is signed on the dotted line to come to Michigan, eligible immediately. This is a kid that has moved around from school to school and has looked for a place, I think, where he could really settle in. Your thoughts? Can this guy come in at the very last minute and provide a boost to Michigan's edge rushers? That was the biggest thing they lost off that defense last year.
Wow, what a great question, John. Is this a good thing or not? I mean, obviously, this is not Michigan typical stuff. You know what I mean? Taking transfers. I mean, the 4th time is a charm. Hopefully here. I mean, it's a little unnerving, but I'm a very open-minded person when it comes to perceiving young people where they can right the ship, get in the right environment. Granted, it's when you look at those 3 schools prior that he didn't stay long. I guess at Tennessee Martin, he played the season actually. It makes you nervous, and you always worry about team chemistry will upset the locker room. But Blake Corum knew him from high school, so Blake Corum is a leader. And people say, "Oh, it'll wreck the." I've talked to some Michigan people. It could jeopardize the chemistry of the locker room. My God, there's over 100 kids in that locker room, and I think there's enough great leadership on this team, seasoned leadership, to prevent anything like that from happening. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's not going to hurt the team. But this kid's got amazing skills. I watched some video. I watched his video Friday night. He seems really genuine about his his commitment to coming to Michigan, his excitement to coming to Michigan, and the metrics look good on him. I mean, you need an edge rusher. He learned the system real quickly and get him involved in those early games. And this is where having a week non-conference slate may work some of these guys in, including him. And now, how do you pronounce the name? Anoma? Is that how? Is that it?
Anoma, yes.
Anoma. Mm-hmm. I remember that. So because I think he's going to be a relevant player if it all works out from the chemistry and the whole dynamics of it.
I think you make a good point about the chemistry thing, but I think there's a way that this can go, and I liken it to you're on the sandlot picking up softball teams, and all of a sudden the new kid walks up and he's 6'4", 250, and some guys say, "Hey, he's not one of our guys. Come on!" And then you see him crank one over the fence, and you say, "Hey, he could help us win." Come on board, buddy.
Well, John, and back, and I trust. I mean, Jim Harbaugh and that staff, they know what they're doing. They know what they're getting into. I trust that's there's been some delving into this issue, and there's been some thought process and conversations and things of that nature before you make such a commitment. Yeah. Because the other thing is you get there's kind of a PR thing too. I mean. Michigan doesn't care what other people might think. I mean, I'm sure the naysayers, the Michigan haters, look who's Michigan. They're desperate for an edge rusher. They're taking a guy who's 0 for 3 to 3 other programs. But Michigan doesn't worry about that. They worry about themselves, what's going on down there at State Street. So I have confidence that Jim Harbaugh and the staff has made the decision that they think is the best interest of the program.
Well, Jim Harbaugh bills Michigan as transformational. So there you have it. That's what probably is the thinking is. And in this era of free agency, they are open to transforming some of the best players they can get. Staying with the football topic, and we mentioned Michigan State, that is not set in terms of game time, but we know, and I have been hearing more and more, that Michigan people who are concerned with this and have something to do with it are preparing for a Michigan State night game. Your thoughts on whether that transpires in Ann Arbor?
Well, it's how many years in a row we always go through this process, if you will. The rumors, the 3:30, it's gonna be 3:30, it's gonna be a night game, whether it be in East Lansing or Ann Arbor, and ends up being a nooner. Okay, especially in East Lansing, where they're a little more leery of fan behavior than they are in Ann Arbor. I mean, I think it would be great. I think it'd be a great atmosphere. I don't have to write like somebody else I know has to write copy until 2 or 3 in the morning.
It's not about us.
I don't care at all. I just get content. I get radio bites and stuff for the TV show and and the podcast, and so. I'm sure the Angelique Chingellises of the world would be grumbling about it, and the John Bortons and Ballases and others. But I think it'd be a great environment, and I think Michigan could handle it. I would be excited if they played at night.
Well, that's the thing about it, and it again, repeat, it is not about us. We may have our work logistics preferences, but that doesn't matter. When it comes to this game, Michigan, let's face it, has been accused of not being as maybe jacked up for this game as have the Spartans. And perfect cure for that, I've not seen Michigan come out anything less than really high and fired up for these night games it's played, whether it be Washington or Notre Dame or whatever. And Michigan State at night, I guarantee you, you might have to have a little security on extra duty around the stadium, but what you're going to have on the field is a really fired up Michigan team, as well as certainly Michigan State. But this might be a way to see the Wolverines match not only the intensity level, but performance on that game. And they haven't had enough of that.
No, you're exactly right. Now, I understand Michigan's going to have a DJ during the game. I mean, they're going to try to ramp up the environment. I'm telling you what, Michigan needs to make the noise volume. However, they say that Michigan Stadium is quiet, although I think that's been ramped up with the suites and everything over the years. I mean, they have to make it so it's this, the play at the line of scrimmage is unmanageable for the opposition, and let Michigan State be the victim of what Michigan has been on the road at Penn State in East Lansing and other environments at night. Michigan State hasn't played them at night, but I mean in East Lansing. But you know what I mean, where it's really a loud environment. And I think this. I sure hope. I got super excited when I saw that little rumor, if you will, come out. And I know it's a long ways away. I know these games are, are sometimes last minute decisions, but boy, if things play out, because I think both are going to have outstanding seasons going into that game.
And I know this much. There will be one Michigan player who is extremely fired up for this and every game this year, and that would be one Ronnie Bell, whom Jim Harbaugh just recently described as, and I quote, tremendous in Michigan practices. Sounds like Ronnie Bell is good to go again, full speed. He's going up against defensive backs. It's not like he is tentative in any way. Really extremely good news, not only for Ronnie Bell, but for Michigan. This guy was a coach on the sidelines last year and is not only a leader, but he is also a really top performer at a wide receiver spot. Not a position particularly of need for Michigan, but he is one of your guys that can be at the top, not only in leadership, but statistically for this group.
Well, John, you think look at that wide receiver position? I got a 6 deep of great football players that make plays, and Ronnie Bell goes beyond making plays. I mean, he is the heart and soul of this team. Let's be real. I mean, you can determine that right now. And this guy epitomizes resiliency. And I don't just go back to that, horrible injury that he had in the opener last year on that punt return, but go back to, I think it was his freshman year, the drop ball against Penn State. And when he had a great game all around that, surrounding that play up into that play, and he dropped that critical pass, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that was his freshman year, and how his teammates, rallied around him. He showed a lot of resiliency. He bounced back from that. That's what true leadership is all about. And I just think he's going to have, God forbid anything else happens to him, this guy's going to have a terrific year. And I just think of the leadership, like to a Darius Clemens, a true talent coming up, what he can provide for him and a mentor. We saw that in the spring game, how excited he was when that kid scored a touchdown in the spring game. This guy is the heart and soul of the Michigan Wolverines in 2022. No question in my mind, John.
You've got some on the defensive side that have people excited. Got the veterans in Mozzie Smith and junior Chris Jenkins really coming along well. You got Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant that have looked much better of late. They are gaining by leaps and bounds as freshmen. Talk about how this is a position, defensive tackle, interior defensive line, that went from what was regarded as so-so beginning of last year to now maybe a strength of this team.
Well, and I hope it's the strength of the team. Well, or one of the strengths of the team. I mean, it's got plenty of strengths in other aspects of it on the offensive side. But yeah, I mean, this is where I talk about this disruption element, and I think there's enough talent to do. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant are two new entities. With Michigan D-line, now we're seeing big guys. We're seeing SEC kind of guys that, in terms of just dominating sizes, like Georgia and Alabama has had. And I think that's going to be huge. Along with Chris Jenkins is one of those guys, kind of an X factor. We've been waiting for him to flourish. Is this going to be the year? It sounds like it could be. But I want to go back to not even the players, but Mike Elston. Mike Elston has coached at Notre Dame in his illustrious career. His last 12 years have been at Notre Dame. 10 of those 12 with the D line. And you look back at some of these D-line that Notre Dame has come up with, he's done a tremendous job. And it sounds like to me he's going to be a great answer as for at D-line coach for Michigan. And boy, I'm talking about. We're just talking about interior line inside. We're not talking, we're as a three technique. We're not talking about the DNs. We've talked about that before, and that's a big issue as well, including the new guy, the young man who's just coming on board. But it's that inside, John. Can you imagine how good Michigan could be if they could get some push on the inside in terms of quarterback pressures that this program has not had in the past? Do you ever remember quarterback pressure from the interior from Michigan D line very much in the last 20 years?
I can a little bit. Mo was a four. Point taken, not a ton of it. That's for sure. And I know that Mike Elston that size, not just getting it off his rushers, but getting it through that line and making these guys outside into forces in there. So that's certainly something that we'll look for this year. Just to finish up, Michigan basketball, 23 turnovers. They got some work to do.
Well, it sounds like Taylor Llewellyn is going to step in. I mean, he was second leading scorer with Hunter, and those two will probably be your go-to guys early on. I like the idea that Jett Howard, we already saw he can do some stuff offensively. And, Kobe Buffkin didn't do anything in this game, and all we've been hearing about how he's put on 15 pounds and he's progressing. And this is so early, and I don't even, this is such. How do you even evaluate this team? We're playing a team overseas. I mean, veteran players. They lost by 15 or whatever. I don't weigh too heavily on that. But I do want to make a point about the basketball team before we close out. That I am disappointed. Back to the schedule thing. They play a lot of neutral games in non-conference play. They do not play in non-conference play in one hostile environment where you go into someone else's gym, which I think is a great growing opportunity for young men, especially a young team. And they don't have that on this year's team. And I think that's unfortunate because they're going to need that to get ready for Big Ten road games. We know how rigorous those are and how tough those are to play in.
Well, there's no doubt that you're going to get punched in the mouth in a hurry when it comes to Big Ten road venues and sink or swim, I guess, in that respect. Yeah. Crawford, always great to have you with us and soon, and appreciate very much your thoughts on not only Michigan football, but Michigan basketball as well.
Look forward next time, John. Always a pleasure to be on here with you.